This week on the Capital Cable 2026 predictions with us, Cha, Yo, Seiler, all that and more next on the Capital Cable. All right, good evening to those of you in Korea. Good morning to those of you in DC. Good day to those of you around the world. Welcome to the 126th installment of the CSIS Capital Cable. I'm Mark Lippert, your host and moderator. This week on the Capital Cable, predictions 2026. What will happen? And we will be able to, I'm sure, ascertain that with 100% assurity, given the all-star panel we have here with you today. Obviously, we have Sid Seiler, we have Andrew Yo, and we have Victor Cha, a group of regular stalwarts here who will guide us through, perform predictive analysis, and otherwise tell us interesting tales that will happen in 2026. We also want to wish everybody a happy holiday season as we move forward here on the show today. All right, let me formally introduce them here. Let me go in no particular order. I'll go Sid Seiler. Look up their bios. You've also had their full bio, I would say, put out online as well here on this show previously. So I'm going to give a truncated version. Sid, nearly 4 decades in the intelligence community, right? At all sorts of stints, NSC, state, DOD, CIA, DNI. Sid's done it all. And of course, with us now at CSIS, you see him online all the time. You see him hosting The Impossible State, and you see him doing all sorts of good stuff otherwise in and around the CSIS community. Sid, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark.
That's it. I had a big build-up, and I just got a thanks. Sid, nothing.
You've said it all as always. You're very kind and generous with your introduction, so I'm overwhelmed.
All right, outstanding. All right, overwhelmed. That is a goal that I set out to overwhelm Sid Seiler. All right, we also know the great Andrew Yo, who's with us here. Andrew Brookings, longtime Korea scholar hand. He's one of the very best in the business. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
So I'm excited that I'm closing out the year for Capital Cable here. I'm assuming this is the last episode we'll get in 2025.
It is, and we saved the big hitters for last intentionally. So there you go. There you go. I also bumped into Andrew at a Wizards game last year, too. So there's that.
That's right.
He's got like a sports thing, so it's all good. All right, last but certainly not least, the one, the only Dr. Victor Cha, who, of course, runs the Geopolitics Center here at CSIS. He's also a university professor at Georgetown, Vice Dean Emeritus, Bush NSC, Defense Policy Board under Biden, and of course, a long-suffering New York Giants fan. Victor, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I don't have nearly all the acronyms in my bio that Sid has. Sid's collected every single acronym in the U.S. government, I think, except for NASA. Except for NASA.
Right? That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, it's great to be on final show of 2025. Very exciting. Mark, are you in your son's, like, where are you?
I'm in my my wife's study at home. So there you go.
All right. Okay.
So there you go. Yeah, I usually use
a hotel room background, so that's why.
I know. Or I use our dining room, but today, due to a whole series of internal machinations, I've been displaced and am in the study. So there we go.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, let's get to it. Thanks for noticing the background here, Victor. Actually, I'll just say this is a cool picture over my shoulder. One digression. It's Sejun when he was about 1-year-old. Folks, I got a little technical interruption. Is everybody back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I think we had you.
Thought it was me.
Yeah, I think it was Victor. So okay. All right, let's get into it. We're ready. Victor will get back up with us. We have these from time to time. All right, Andrew, let's go to you. I'm going to go old school, kind of John McLaughlin style here and ask you the first question. In a very short, punchy answer, in 2026, the U.S. ROK alliance will be stronger.
That's a tough one because I always say that the alliance is resilient and it's robust. And, we were at a pretty strong place during the Yoon Biden era. But if I were to give a yes or no answer, I would say we would be, I'm going to waffle here a bit and say that we're going to be put on hold. We're going to consistently move forward, but I think there's some bumps ahead in the road. The joint fact sheet, I think, was a great way to kind of end out 2025 on the alliance. There's a lot of uncertainty during the trade negotiations, questions about alliance modernization. Fact sheet is out, tariffs are lowered, but the details are still being ironed out. There's on the security side, we know that there wasn't a lot of detail on the 2006 agreement, which is referring to strategic flexibility. We have to see how Korea decides to engage with China. How does that suit with the Trump administration? We have to see how Trump also navigates U.S.-China relations, because I think there's some discrepancy between the way Trump sees China and the way maybe the Pentagon does. And in the NSS as well too, there's I know the Koreans seemed worried that we had left out denuclearization. We being the United States had left out denuclearization, and the Koreans are wondering what is the thinking on U.S.-North Korea relations. So there's still plenty of room, I think, for connections between Trump and Lee. I think both are pragmatists. Both will try to see what they can gain out of the alliance. This term alliance modernization, I think, is flexible enough that they can find wins, but there are these uncertainties continuing even with the tariffs because of details. One recent just example is I think the South Korean National Assembly is going to push forward the Online Platform Act again in a revised or different a tripartite version of it. And already I've been hearing some critiques about this breaking, I guess, the spirit of cooperation on non-tariff barriers. So yeah, there's still points of friction I think that we have to go over, and because of Trump and we don't really know what direction he takes, you can never be reassured. So I can't give the 100% yes, U.S. South Korea alliance is going to be stronger, but I think we're going to be on this steady hold position as the two sides try to navigate the relationship.
All right, excellent, Andrew. And the other thing I take away from you, you're lots of opportunities too. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Some peril, right? But opportunities. All right,
Yeah,
I'm a
we didn't even
half-full
get
guy.
into things like nuclear subs or shipbuilding. So maybe Sid or Victor can weigh in on that front.
All right, outstanding. All right, Sid, to you, I'm going to ask you a question. You're in 2026, in 2026, President Trump will meet with Kim Jong-un, and it will be a productive meeting. Yes or no? What do you think here? And why?
That's an unknowable, and I think it's ultimately more symbolism and politics than substance in terms of the answer to the question. Because I've always asserted if they meet, then it's likely not to yield very much in terms of the central issues about which we're concerned. North Korea's destabilizing behavior, its nuclear program, and it's distancing itself almost permanently from South Korea. I think, to kind of take a little bit, go back to address the first question, because I think it's related. We're beginning to see, the manageable fissures in the alliance, but they are manifesting themselves over the past several days over this debate over who owns North Korea policy within the Republic of Korea. What is the foreign ministry's role? What is the unification ministry's role? How do we balance alliance versus autonomy? And this alliance autonomy question, for now, everybody's pretty confident. We have a good, experienced National Security Office Director in Wee Sung-nak. He is managing his interagency on his end, as well as the alliance on our end, sending some good signals. But we're already having debates over the value of pressure, over the value of pursuing improved human rights, potentially moving exercises. And we've seen some and the statement on the United Nations Command and its legitimate role and overseeing and administering the armistice, which is being challenged by some circles within the ROK. So I think North Korea is sitting back and watching to see how these fissures develop and fester and expand. It's to North Korea's advantage right now to not talk to the United States. Kim's got a guy he can turn to. He's got a friend he can turn to in times of need, in Vladimir Putin. There's uncertainties about the relationship with China, but it's looking manageable from Kim's perspective. There's nothing that either Seoul or Washington can actually offer Kim that would lead him to break from the stand down on dialogue between us and with the ROK since 2019. So I'd like to hedge and say, yeah, it's possible they'll meet. I just don't see that it would be under conditions favorable to Kim, or more importantly, conditions favorable to Donald Trump or Lee Myung.
Gotcha. So meeting itself, I would, say from your remarks, possible, or even likely, but progress. You're very, I would say, pessimistic on for 2026.
So, people talk about the President Trump trying to create this legacy of pursuing peace in various, troubled theaters of the world, and having some limited success, particularly in negotiating short-term ceasefires, de-escalation of tensions, questionable longer-term strategic impact of these deals. But what would he come to Korea to fix right now? Right now in North Korea and South Korea, we're in a state of tension, but we're really not. There's no bullets flying or missiles being launched that would warrant some type of, earth-shattering kind of status quo challenging type of intervention by the president. And so, the best he could do is this is why a Panmunjom meeting during recent APEC would have made so much sense. They both could have went there, shook hands, talked for an hour or two, and broke up, and then those expectations will have been fulfilled. Right now, what's the venue in which these two meet? It's hard to explain.
Got it. All right, excellent. Sid, is Victor back up, by the way?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Victor, a question to you. Obviously, feel free to comment on the other questions, but I want to shift to trilateral. The warming trend in trilateral relations will continue in 2026. What do you think on that proposition?
I am hopeful that it will continue. I think the external environment dictates that it continues. There's a lot of things that the three countries need to deal with, both in terms of threats and opportunities. But I'm also worried about it, frankly. There have been some difficulties in the relationship, less enthusiasm. I think on the South Korean side with regard to the new Japanese prime minister, really nothing, no statements from the South Koreans when China put economic pressure on Japan for Takaichi's basically restatement of basic Japanese policy. As you know, I've written about how I think the Chinese are probably going to come after the South Koreans in the new year over the nuclear submarines with some sort of economic coercion. So it would be nice to see some sort of collective, collective effort by the three countries with regard to some of these issues. But I'm not hopeful right now. I'll just say on Kim Jong-un, I'm going to put I'll say 60% chance, right? 60% chance that they'll meet in the first quarter of 2026. I agree with Sid. I don't think there'll be some massive breakthrough, but given where we are now, if the two meet, would that really be a bad thing? Probably not, right? The two can meet and then they can say yeah, our people are going to work on implementing the Singapore Declaration, but we just are meeting, right? Not necessarily a bad thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so some guarded optimism, I would say, on both counts, right? There we go. All right, excellent. Hope springs eternal.
So the end of the year, I want to be glass half full, like you, Mark.
Well, that's true, and I did say everybody's going to be 100% right, so it's 60% times 100%, I think, in the Lippert math world. Anyway, so all right, outstanding. All right, thanks, Victor. There. All right, back to Andrew. Andrew, let me come to you. You raised this in your first intervention, but let me tease it out. The relationship between Seoul and Beijing will warm in 2026. Yes or no? What do you think?
It's also contingent on a series of external events. I mean, my assumption is yes, because the progressives and Lee Jae-myung for the first 6 months was so focused on the U.S. because of the tariff negotiations and ensuring that the U.S. ROC alliance was on a strong footing, and so now they're going to turn towards uh, Beijing. And as Lee Jae-myung had said multiple times, that he wants to uh, he comes at these issues as a pragmatist, and he says that he wants to maintain positive relations with even countries that may be seen as adversaries to the U.S., so China and Russia. I think the constraints, though, is that there's two. One is domestically, South Koreans are still very anti-China. There are a lot of anti-China protests, and those don't seem to be going away anytime soon. And then second is just within the region, South Korea just seems to they seem to be becoming more and more emboldened. They're using more coercion. We've seen gray zone tactics taking place in the Yellow Sea, much like they have in the South China Sea. I know CSIS has done really good work on this on the Yellow Sea, looking at China's maritime activities, including expanded patrols, fixed structures. And these are like de facto efforts to try to lay claim to this area. And that's something that South Koreans are certainly worried about. So if these issues keep continuing, it'll be hard for Lee to try to improve that relationship. But we'll see. I think China may think, the coercion on Japan because of the Taiwan issues, maybe Lee may balk at that. He may not, he may walk back anything related to Taiwan or the Indo-Pacific. So I think the default, at least for Seoul, is to have that relationship improve, and it can move in that direction. But there are these constraints that I think the Lee government faces for improved Seoul-Beijing ties.
Okay, interesting. So I guess to summarize, your takeaway is I'm going to say opportunities, but structural constraints. So watch that space between the push and pull on those two drivers. Is that a fair?
I think the progressives definitely want to see this happening. They also see that Trump has released the gas pedal a bit on things like export controls, and we saw the TikTok deal now going through, and so there might be some opportunities or openings for South Koreans to also engage with China. So they are certainly hopeful moving in that direction. But yes, I think you summed it up succinctly in that there are these structural constraints both on the domestic and the regional front.
All right, very fair. I'll just say as a comment here, from Seoul, reading the U.S.-China tea leaves and which direction the U.S. is going to go is an increasingly complicated piece of business, right? Not at all easy. All right, as for some of the reasons you just pointed out. All right, now let's come back to Sid. Sid, I've got another North Korea question for you. How's this one? The relationship between, and you alluded to this also in your intervention, the relationship between Moscow and Pyongyang will continue to improve and institutionalize over the coming year in 2026. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think there's a few holdouts out there, but I think those of us who may have been inclined to think that the initial cooperation was purely transactional, a target of opportunity. Moscow had things Pyongyang needed, Pyongyang had capabilities Moscow needed. I think what's evolved since then has proven the strategic dimensions of this relationship. This goes far beyond the question the morning after, right? Suppose there were an end to the conflict in Ukraine, would suddenly Vladimir Putin, delete Kim Jong-un from his most favorites list in his cell phone? Probably not. And so the implications of this strategic relationship, we've looked at it within the crank, right? The China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea context, this alternative world order context where led by Beijing and Moscow, these countries that are choosing to reject the liberal world order now are encouraged that they can do so and get away with it. There is a lifeline, a multi-dimensional lifeline that Moscow is now throwing to North Korea. Part of it is enhancements to their WMD and conventional forces. Part of it is inputs such as fuel, food, hard cash, etc. A part of it simply is, partners in creating a world conducive to the type of future North Korea envisions itself as a nuclear power being able to at least survive, if not even thrive at some point in. So we can't think about anything on the peninsula outside of the context of that, because that Russia lifeline has such an impact on everything from inter-Korea relations to U.S. DPRK dialogue to stability on the peninsula to the advance of the WMD program. And that's where we got to keep our eyes, that's what we need to keep our eyes on going forward.
Okay, let me just ask one quick follow-up. This is not very McLaughlin-esque, but even if the Ukraine war ends, you still see the strategic drivers bringing the two closer together.
Certainly, there is a shared worldview and a shared, it's maybe not so much ideological. This isn't communism versus capitalism, Cold War One like style, but it is, definitely a different worldview for these autocrats and revisionist powers who, have legitimized the use of force for strategic objectives, rejected constraints placed on it by the international system, in North Korea's case, Security Council resolutions. So you have that, as well as the long-term need. What does Russia need right now? It needs laborers. And what does North Korea have? Young men and women who they can send to help in reconstruction, building drones, other labor-intensive work that Russia has. And so just reconstruction alone and restockpiling munitions stockpiles of Russia, I can see this relationship just going on a steady course for the next 5 to 10 years, frankly, after any ceasefire in Ukraine.
Okay, excellent, Sid. All right, Victor, over to you. Victor, I'm going to go economic on you on this one here, and it's been alluded to also, but tease this one out for me. The tariffs and trade relationship between the United States and Korea will stabilize in 2026.
I certainly hope it'll stabilize. I mean, and I would say I certainly hope it would stabilize, and it could be the exception to the rule, in the sense that I don't think Trump is done with tariffs. I think, many countries are now down to 15%. The U.S. average tariff rate now is up to like 17% or something, from 2%, and that's where Trump thinks it should be. But I don't think that means that he will not go after certain sectors. If he sees huge imbalances, he may go after certain sectors. But then, South Korea may be the exception to the rule, and in part, this may have to do with the Hyundai raid, in the sense that although that was terribly embarrassing and ill-timed and everything else, Trump even called it stupid. He's kind of got now an antenna up for something that goes wrong with South Korea, given all the money that's involved in terms of the investments. I think the Hyundai raid, he clearly didn't know about it, but it was certainly brought to his attention, because it was directly contradicting two of his policies, right? The immigration and the investment policies were coming into conflict with each other. Certainly brought to his very high level attention, probably Wiles and Trump and others. We see how the U.S. is trying to deal with it now. Korea is a special case. So they could be an exception to it. I mean, it's possible. I mean, we're all speculating here, but I don't. Bottom line is, I don't think Trump is done with tariffs. I think we could see sectoral tariffs in 2026. But Korea may be able to fly under the radar, given the past debacles, and which highlighted the high stakes of the Korea relationship for Trump in terms of the trade and investment deal, the shipbuilding, nuclear energy, and other areas.
Right. Well put. Well put. And I guess on the flip side, watch this space. I think Andrew mentioned it. It's the Online Platform Act, which never seems to go away and always seems to be an explosive issue. So this is really interesting. All right. Outstanding. All right. So this is another. You're turning into President Obama here, in that there's a lot of hope. We like that, but also some pitfalls out there as well. Okay, outstanding. All right, Andrew, to you, I haven't given you a North Korea question yet. Let me give you one. The nuclear weapons program will continue to expand, and as a result, the North Koreans will become more provocative in their behavior in and around the peninsula.
Yeah. I should just say the premise of this, though, is to make predictions while Trump is president is incredibly difficult because there's like another wild card factor that's thrown into this. So
Yes.
we're doing our best here on the North
Don't
Korea.
worry, I just promised 100% accuracy at
I'm
the
going to split
outset.
this
So
up into
don't-
two. I can guarantee 100% North Korea is going to continue to move along on its nuclear program.
There you go.
There was a
there we go.
report-
There we go.
There was a report on Yeonbyung, and 38 North actually had a great piece on this about how the North Koreans have been developing the Yeonbyung site. This was the site that North Korea in 2018 had promised to shut down, and now instead of shutting down, this thing has expanded. There's more. I think it's not only expanded, but I think in terms of cooling towers, reactors, this all suggests that they're increasing the pace of proliferation. So, if we have, 60 to 80 warheads now, they could maybe double that capacity in a few years. So they are trudging along with their nuclear program, with their missile program. We haven't seen the type of missile activity that we saw in 2022. Where there was a record number of missile tests, but the assumption is that their technology is improving as well with ties to Russia. So certainly on that front, we're going to see improved North Korean weapons capabilities. Whether that means that North Korea is going to become more provocative, that is a lot harder, I think, to predict, and also will depend on certain, I think, circumstances. Certainly, if Kim Jong-un is thinking or considering some kind of meeting with Trump, he may lay it cool for a while. Before the meeting, I think before April at least, I'm not going to predict anything drastic or dramatic from the regime. Because they're going to get a drubbing, I think, from China and Xi Jinping if there's any kind of provocations there. But we'll see. So again, definitely yes on North Korea's weapons capabilities improving. On whether we'll see large-scale provocations, that remains to be seen. We didn't see them this past year, so I'm not so sure about next year either.
All right, outstanding. It sounds like those some strong predictions in two elements. One will continue, but two, before a possible Trump-Xi meeting, very unlikely that provocations will occur. That's fair, right?
Yes, correct.
So,
all right, outstanding.
Mark,
Go, Victor.
Can I say,
Victor.
I don't know how to say, I actually think the opposite. I actually think that North Korea may do something in the new year to build up some leverage, and frankly, I don't think they care whether China likes it or not. I mean, given given their relationship with Russia, and two, they just generally don't care whether the Chinese like it or not. I'm not saying it's going to be a seventh nuclear test, but it wouldn't surprise me if starting out in 2026, we see more activity by North Korea because they've been pretty quiet up until now, and good things don't last very long with North Korea.
I had the privilege of landing on the ground in Beijing for talks with Wu Dao-wei and company, literally 30 minutes after flying over Yeonpyeong-do, we were flying from Tokyo to Beijing. You've heard me tell the story. And literally 30 minutes after we flew over Waipido, the island was shelled. And, we get in the vehicle, Steve Bosworth and I, head on out to MFA. The press is asking us questions. We don't have any talking points. It's the middle of the night in Washington. We get to, and what do the Chinese tell us? Well, this is Lee Myung-bak's fault. This is, the result of the hardline policy. And, we got to move on. This is what North Korea does. And so, Victor, to play to you, I don't think China would make a real big deal out of a provocation. Of course, it depends on how you define provocation, because provocation's lethal and kinetic along the lines of sinking a ship or shelling an island, shooting out in the DMZ, maybe less likely. Missile launches, short of a seventh nuclear test, certainly within the realm of possible. And so, they say, there's two challenges to the North Korea expert. People expect you to know everything without being a know-it-all, and people expect you to predict everything without saying, I told you so. But I think one of the reasons why both Victor and Andrew can be right on this is based upon how you define a provocation. North Korea will not let itself fall off of the radar of everybody in launching missiles, helping and doing extra, particularly when we have our military exercises in March and April, probably will generate some type of shows of force on North Korea's side.
All right.
Add
So
one more
we had our
thing.
most. Go, Andrew, go.
Mark. So I know Victor has great data on and beyond parallel looking at North Korea provocations, and I think historically they have conducted a provocation before some kind of event, before State of the Union, before elections. But in the past year or two, I feel like North Korea's strategy may have shifted a bit, maybe because its international recognition or legitimacy has been boosted with its ties to Russia, its diplomacy with China. And I don't know if that's maybe changed the calculus and maybe decreased the need for the regime to do this sort of hand waving. I'm not saying that it could still happen for sure. But that's, I think, one of the reasons why maybe I'm not so bullish like Victor that there is going to be a provocation in 2026. But we'll see. I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Can I build on that real quick, Mark?
Yes, we're almost out of time, Sid, though. So
if you remember the National Intelligence Estimate posits three potential futures, right? If you think back on that, where North Korea is using nuclear weapons, leveraging North Koreans for offensive, coercive, or defensive purposes. And the defensive purpose, North Korea, was essentially a normal nuclear North Korea. We have weapons, other countries have weapons. You launch, we launch. You exercise, we exercise. But we're not out looking for trouble. And so along the lines of what Andrew mentioned, the idea that somehow Kim can advance the idea that we should live with a nuclear North Korea is undermined by excessive provocations, but enhanced by periods where we don't see them. And like you said, we haven't seen it for the past year and a half. We hope it continues, but we'll just have to see.
All right, outstanding. So this has been the most controversial question, postulation, prediction, and someone at the end is going to get to say, "I told you so." So we're gonna hold you to it. So that's one. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left. I want everybody to go around and give me kind of 2 or 3 minutes on what they see in the final year. Then we're going to wrap it up. So, Victor, to you first.
Oh, to me first? Okay. So what do we expect to see going forward?
Yes.
Oh,
kind of your general thoughts that we didn't cover here, and/or a summation here, your closing argument about 2026.
So I think we talk about this in terms of what the alliance will be like, what North Korea may do, relations with Japan and others, but the big variable that will sort of generate all sorts of ripple effects will be the U.S. China meeting, right, in April, because we still don't know exactly how that's going to turn out. There could be an escalation in U.S.-China relations in advance of the meeting. They made a deal in APEC, but there could be an escalation in advance of the meeting as both sides try to gain leverage. That is not outside the realm of possibility. In addition to that, people like Tom Wright at Brookings, since we're doing this mutual admiration thing on the show between Brookings and CSIS, I think Tom Wright has it right when he says that Trump is not really a security hawk on China. He's an economic hawk on China, which makes him very susceptible to deals where the Chinese trade economic carrots for security benefits for themselves, particularly vis-a-vis Taiwan. People around Trump say, no, he's too smart. Trump's too smart. He's never going to allow that to happen. But the South Koreans are going to buy 103 Boeing airplanes. The Japanese bought 100 F-150s or whatever it is. Like those things are very alluring to Trump. So, and so if there are deals like that where there are big economic deals that Trump likes that rebalances trade, but then there are security things that he gives up, that could create a lot of tension, problem, concerns among the allies. So So I agree with what like Andrew said on the direction of the alliance. I think that's right. But the big variable that we just don't know is what happens between the United States and China, because it could go in any number of directions. Um, um, and I guess the one thing there is that whatever the economic deal they reach, probably by definition will not be permanent because both sides are they sort of reach the cliff and they pull back from the cliff. Um, but once you give up certain security equities, you may be able to pull those back, but what you've lost is American reliability and predictability. And that's not easy to gain back. Like that's not easy to gain back, even if you like roll back the security thing you gave away. So it's just something
No, very, very well put, Victor.
yeah.
Last one to you quickly that you didn't cover. The 2026 New York Giants will win more than 8 games.
No.
There we go.
Period.
All right. All right. Outstanding. All right. Thank you. Andrew.
But the Knicks
Go.
are going to the finals this year.
All right. There we
They
go.
go to the
Okay.
finals this year.
Okay. You got to find a half full
That's right.
New York sports example. All right. All right. Excellent. All right. Andrew, to you.
Sure. But just on the Giants, I think this is just going to be a drag like every season, I feel like on Capitol Cable until the Giants start improving. So um, I feel sorry for Victor.
It'll be Mark introducing this is the 500th episode of the Capital Table.
Outstanding. All right.
But,
Andrew.
just to add to Victor, something that I'm watching, but I think we didn't get to address here, but will be a variable in 2026 is domestic politics. Now, I was asked by some of my colleagues at Brookings in the Brookings Governance Program. They're doing this Democracy 2026 playbook, and they want to make a comparative and look at examples where we see these democratic U-turns. And of course, everyone's familiar with martial law last December. But now things are moving forward in terms of President Lee. But this past week, the special prosecutor, came out with their investigation of martial law and President Yoon's martial law and insurrection attempt. And so we have to see the direction of where, South Korean I think democracy is extremely resilient. Institutionally, it's resilient, but we still see a polarized South Korea, so that might have a bearing on the country as a whole. But then, more specifically, there's even factions within within the parties, and in this case, the Democratic Party of Korea. Well, we spoke about this at the very beginning. Even when you look at cleavages between MOFA and the Ministry of Unification and views on how they should approach North Korea, there are these differences, and they may have a bearing on which direction the country takes. And even with Lee Sung-lak, who's the National Security Advisor, I said after the summit meeting in Washington on August 25th, that the real winner here is Lee Sung-lak, because he managed to persuade, I think, many skeptics in DC that Lee Jae-myung was serious about sustaining and strengthening the U.S.-ROK relationship. But there may be progressives, those that are more to the left of center, who want to take the alliance in a different direction. If there's any misstep or miscue of Trump, the Trump administration does something that's an affront to South Korea or angers South Koreans, it might be harder for Lee Jae-myung to continue. He may have to actually do something or retaliate and stand up for South Korean pride. But that could be. But that could result in some kind of shift within the inter-party circle, especially when it comes to national security issues and the U.S.-ROK alliance. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. Back
All right,
over to you, Mark.
Outstanding, Andrew. All right, Sid, last word to you.
Andrew, a lot of great ideas there. One is watching the current process right now, and the driver for the progressives has to be to weaken the conservatives to the greatest degree possible, to lock up elections for the foreseeable future, at least through the next presidential election. So they're going to have to make calls on how, the right level of retributive justice, as it were, to how far, how long are they going to drag out these processes to try to further establish the conservatives as dangerous, anti-national, anti-democracy forces. And so you've got that playing out. I actually think some of the debate on North Korea policy, yeah, I watched it over the last week, but at the same time, when you hear the arguments about the pro-engagement faction versus kind of the pro-alliance, or more specifically, the alliance versus the autonomy, the pro-engagement faction continues to kind of lack any type of evidence that we've tested over and over for 3 decades that engaging with North Korea substantially and sustainably contributes to reduction of tension on the peninsula. I think Lee Jae-myung is well aware of this mess he inherited. The mess he inherited was not because of Yoon Suk-yeol. It was not because of failures by previous presidents left and right in Korea. It's the nature of North Korea, the advance of its program. We can't make assessments of North Korea's intent based solely on capabilities alone, but let's not forget that the expansion of their conventional capabilities, the revival of both munitions industry production capabilities, as well as tangible enhancements in the air, navy, ground fields, give Kim more options. That doesn't mean he'll use them, but they will have more. And I think Lee Jae-myung very pragmatically is saying, we've got to figure out a way to coexist. We're likely not to achieve denuclearization. Maybe we can slow and impede the growth of the program. We know the alliance is important because we can't defeat the North on our own, but we also need to engage because maybe we just buy peace and stability and calm one day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year at a time. It sounds like a new version of strategic patience, but it's really maybe the only pragmatic way for Lee Jae-myung to deal with North Korea during his time in office.
Okay, with that gavel down on year 2025 on the Capitol Cable, thank you, Sid Seiler. Thank you, Andrew Yo. Thank you, Victor Cha. I'm just going to conclude by saying the one issue we didn't get to that I would love and we'll pick up next year is where are we going to be on this, what I would call this nuclear bucket of issues, right? In South Korea, 1, 2, 3, enrichment, reprocessing, nuclear submarine, energy, all of that good stuff. So look for that in 2026. We'll dissect that. And the question I would pose to myself is, will the Doosan Bears win the KBO series in 2026? And the answer is unequivocally yes. So Chaegong Doosan, everybody have a great holiday season. Thanks for tuning in to the Capitol Cable in 2025. And we'll see everybody next year. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Happy holidays.